3 very creepy YouTuber horror stories. It all started innocently enough. Like most terrifying things, it began quietly. Eric, just a regular guy like any other YouTuber, was gaining some traction. He had his own niche, deep diving into the eerie, the strange, and the unexplained corners of the web. It wasn't a massive following, but he had a loyal group of viewers who enjoyed his content. One night, while scrolling through Reddit, Eric stumbled upon a thread titled, "Have you heard of the Watchers channel? It's still posting, but the creator has been dead for over a decade." Eric paused. He clicked. He knew this was going to be something worth exploring, worth sharing with his audience. It screamed creepy, and that's exactly what he needed for his next video. The channel, it was strange. It had no profile picture, just a black banner filled with nothing but static. The titles of the videos were oddly vague. Watch Episode 1. Watch Episode 2. All of them the same, with no description. They were untouched, with 0 views. But the latest upload was recent, less than 24 hours ago. Eric couldn't resist. Later that night, as the quiet hum of his computer filled the room, Eric sat before his camera. The soft click of the record button echoed in the room. The lights flickered slightly, adding to the tension in the air. "All right, folks," Eric spoke into the lens, his voice calm but excited. "Tonight's video is going to be a bit different. I found something on YouTube that, well, you'll see. It's called the Watchers channel, and the thing is, the creator is supposedly dead, but the channel is still posting videos. So, let's dive into this." He clicked on the first video. At first, all that appeared was static. The kind you'd get when the signal cuts out, like an old TV left on the wrong channel. The screen flickered, and then it cleared. In front of him was a small, dimly lit room. There was a chair, slightly askew in the middle of it, gently rocking back and forth, as if someone had just gotten up. Eric leaned in. This was strange, but nothing to worry about, right? The seconds ticked on, but the video didn't change. 2 minutes went by. The chair, it kept rocking. And then the screen cut to black. "That's it?" Eric muttered, shaking his head in confusion. Not much to go on, but all right. He hit the next video. The second one was worse. The room was the same, but this time there was someone sitting in the chair. But the figure's face was shrouded in darkness. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It just sat there, its back hunched, the air around it thick with something Eric couldn't place. The seconds ticked by. The room, it felt colder. Then, after 2 minutes, the video cut out again. Eric shivered. Something about it unsettled him, but his curiosity was too strong. He had to see more. He clicked on the latest video. The title read, "Watch, Episode 1784. This time, the room was different, messier. Papers were scattered across the floor, and strange symbols were scratched into the walls, barely visible in the dim light. The figure in the chair was there again. But now it wasn't still. It was leaning toward the camera, its posture unnatural, its movements jerky, almost twitching. And then, for a split second, Eric's breath caught. He thought he saw something. Through the grainy, distorted footage, the figure's face, he could have sworn, looked directly at him, stared into his eyes. But then the screen flickered. The face disappeared. The video cut off. Eric froze. His hands shook slightly as he reached for the mouse, rewinding the video. Frame by frame, he watched the moment over and over again. It was gone. He watched it again. No, it couldn't be. But it was there. Wasn't it? Okay, this is getting weird, Eric muttered to himself. He felt the room grow colder, the air heavier, as if something was pressing in on him. But for some reason, he couldn't stop. Later that night, Eric sat at his desk editing the video, but something was wrong. His computer kept glitching, freezing on him. He tried to play the footage back, but there was a faint whisper in the background, growing louder, unmistakable. It was coming from the recording itself. "Keep watching. Keep watching." Eric's eyes widened. He ripped off his headphones, his heart pounding. He checked the video again. No whispers, no distortion, just silence. But he knew what he'd heard. He knew. Still, he brushed it off. It was nothing. A glitch, a freak occurrence. But as the night wore on, the feeling, it didn't go away. It grew. He glanced nervously at the door, the corners of the room, as though expecting someone, or something, to step out of the shadows. It wasn't until the next day that things started to spiral. He had just gotten an alert on his phone. Another notification from YouTube. New upload from the Watchers channel. Eric's heart skipped a beat. He clicked the link. The video was titled Watch Episode 1785. And the moment the screen loaded, Eric felt something deep inside him stir, something dark. The video was live, and it was showing a shot of his bedroom, not the normal angle. This was from the far corner of his room, from the shadows, from a place that made it feel like someone had been standing there, watching him. His room. Eric stood still. He didn't dare move, and that's when the figure appeared, the same figure. But now, it was standing behind him, right behind him. For a moment, everything went silent. Eric's breath caught. He turned, but nothing was there. Nothing. He was alone, except he wasn't. His heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't stop. He clicked the button to stop the stream, but just as his finger hovered over the button, the figure leaned closer. Its face, a twitching mess of shadows and distortion, was inches from the screen. The video cut off. Everything went black. The next morning, Eric tried to act normal. His channel was gone, erased. Every video he'd ever posted, every trace of his online existence, gone. But the whispers? They never stopped. In every corner of the room, in the silence of the night. And then, just when he thought it was over, his phone buzzed again. New upload from the Watchers channel. Eric's hands trembled. He didn't want to look. He couldn't look. But the urge was unbearable. He reached for his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen, and as the video played, the same reflection from the first time appeared. His own face. But this time, he wasn't alone. He wasn't alone at all. The channel had erased his presence, but the Watcher was still watching, and Eric knew then, too late, that it wasn't just a YouTube channel. It was an invitation, a cycle, and the more you watched, the more it took. And now, it was his turn. As the notification popped up again, new upload from the Watchers channel, Eric realized with growing dread, the cycle was about to begin again, and this time, he couldn't stop it. This is Very Scariest YouTuber Horror Story number 2. Sable had always been a quiet soul. She wasn't the type to speak much in social settings. She preferred to observe, to listen. But there was one thing she knew she could do better than most. Tell a story. Horror stories, to be exact. It was more than a hobby for her. It was her passion, her escape. When she first created her YouTube channel, Whispers in the Dark, it was a small, humble space. Just a place where she could share her love for creepy tales, where she could bring her audience into worlds of mystery, terror, and things that go bump in the night. Her audience was small but loyal. She had a gift for drawing people in with nothing but her voice. She could make her listeners feel like they were standing in the haunted halls of a crumbling mansion, or standing in front of a shadowy figure, never quite sure if it was real. But something had started to change. Something unsettling. It was subtle at first, but then she began to feel it. The air in her videos felt different, a bit colder, a bit darker, and it all began with her latest video. The Haunting of Ravenwood Asylum. She had poured her heart into it. The story was a fictional one, her version of a haunted asylum, abandoned and forgotten, full of tragic secrets. It was her best work. Her voice, as always, was eerie yet soothing. She guided her audience down winding hallways, through long abandoned rooms, always leaving them on the edge of their seats. But when the video was posted, something strange happened. The first comment appeared early in the morning. It was from an anonymous user, with a jumble of random numbers and letters for a profile name. The comment was short, cryptic. "You're telling the story wrong." Sable blinked at the screen. She thought maybe it was just a typo, or some confused viewer trying to get attention. But when she scrolled down, another comment appeared. "The asylum is real, you just don't know it yet." Her heart skipped a beat. What? That wasn't possible. Ravenwood Asylum wasn't real. It was just a setting for her story. She had made it up. Sure, she'd based it on old asylum blueprints she'd found online, but it wasn't real. It couldn't be. Still, a cold shiver ran down her spine as she read the comment again. Then another appeared. This one was even stranger. "I'm waiting for you in room 6. It's where the stories end." Her breath hitched in her throat. The words, "Room 6, where the stories end." It felt like a warning, a challenge. She stared at the comment for a long time, trying to make sense of it. But she couldn't. And the comments kept coming, one after another, each one more cryptic than the last. "I know you're listening. You won't be able to leave once you're here. It wasn't just a joke. It wasn't some fan playing a prank. Number." It felt real. The air felt heavy in the room. The sound of the comments clicking, one after another, filled the silence. She felt watched. And then, it hit her. Sable had to know more. She couldn't just ignore these comments. She couldn't let it go. That night, she did something she never thought she would. She decided to investigate. She sat in front of her computer, staring at the dark screen, the cursor blinking, waiting for her to type. Slowly, almost against her will, she typed "Ravenwood Asylum" into the search bar. The search results came up quickly, but one article caught her eye. "Ravenwood Asylum closes after mysterious disappearances." She clicked it. The article was short, barely more than a blurb, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. It spoke of the asylum's closure in 1987, after several patients disappeared without a trace. The staff vanished too, leaving behind only empty rooms and eerie silence. The article was filled with rumors, strange occurrences, sightings of figures in the windows, but no one knew for sure what had happened there. Sable's fingers trembled on the keyboard as she clicked to open more links, more reports. The more she read, the more the eerie feeling in the pit of her stomach grew. There was something wrong about all of this. Something that made her heart race and her breath catch in her throat. The descriptions of the asylum, they matched her story. The long, narrow hallways, the rusted metal doors, the feeling of something watching you even when you were alone. She had never been there. She couldn't have known those details, right? But the deeper she dug, the more the truth felt like it was slipping just beyond her reach. And then, she found something else. A video. A blurry, low-quality clip posted on a forum from years ago. It was old, but it had a title that made her heart skip. "The Last Visitor to Ravenwood." It showed someone just like her, walking through the crumbling halls of the asylum. The figure's face was obscured, but the camera angle was eerily familiar. Sable's blood ran cold. Was this real? She had to see it for herself. The next day, she packed her things, and that night, she drove out to Ravenwood Asylum. The drive took hours. The closer she got, the more unsettled she became. It wasn't until she reached the gate that she felt that weight in her chest, the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Ravenwood stood before her, looming in the darkness. The wind howled through the trees and the air was colder here, unnaturally cold. The asylum was silent, like it was holding its breath. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. The silence was suffocating. Sable hesitated. Her feet felt heavy as she stepped out of the car. She grabbed her flashlight, her camera, and her backpack, all the while fighting the overwhelming urge to turn and drive away. But she couldn't. Not now. With a deep breath, she walked toward the front door. The creak of the hinges echoed through the air as she pushed it open, stepping into the cold, musty air inside. Everything felt wrong. The walls, the floors, even the very air felt like it was pressing in on her. She wasn't alone. The moment the door slammed shut behind her, she knew it. She wasn't alone. She walked deeper into the asylum, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The halls stretched on forever, and the silence was deafening. Her heart raced in her chest, pounding so loudly she could almost hear it. Every footstep echoed, far too loud in the empty building, and then she saw it. Room 6. The door was cracked slightly open as if waiting for her. The moment she saw it, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. Room 6. It was calling her. The door creaked as she approached it, her hand trembling as she reached for the knob. But before she could open it, something stopped her. A voice. Soft. Cold. "You shouldn't have come." Her breath caught in her throat. Her heart skipped. She pushed the door open. Inside, the room was bare. Except for one thing. The walls were covered in scrawled writing. "You shouldn't have come." And then, the door slammed shut. The video went up on her channel the next morning. The title, The Last Story. Sable didn't remember uploading it. The video was different. Grainy footage, a shaky camera, and her face, pale, trembling, staring at the screen with wide eyes. The background shifted. Something moved, and then the voice. "You're part of the story now." The comments flooded in. "You shouldn't have come." And then she was gone. Her channel, Whispers in the Dark, remained silent. The last video stayed up. The comments? They didn't stop. Room 6 is waiting for you too. And Sable. She was never heard from again. This is Most Disturbing YouTuber Horror Story number 3. It all started like any other Saturday night. Jaspin, a well-known YouTuber with a loyal fan base, was getting ready for her live stream. She adjusted her microphone, double-checked her camera position, and settled into her chair. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her heart racing slightly with excitement. It was time to go live. Her usual gaming streams were full of energy and excitement. But tonight was different. Tonight she wasn't playing a popular game, something her viewers would expect. Tonight, she was trying something strange. Earlier that week, Jaspin had discovered a game, Silent Streamer, that no one had ever heard of. It had 0 reviews, no walkthroughs. It was buried beneath everything else on the internet. But that's what intrigued her. No one else had played it, and that felt like a challenge. Something was off about it, but she couldn't resist. She clicked, "Go live." The chat flooded with comments as the timer hit 0. "Ready to see you scream, Jaspin. Let's go." "What's tonight's horror game?" "You're gonna freak out, I can already tell." Her fingers danced over the keyboard, typing out responses to the excited messages. But tonight, the energy felt different. It was darker. Tension was thick in the air. Something was waiting. At exactly 11 p.m., she clicked on Silent Streamer. The title screen appeared, black text against a pitch-black background. The words, "Press Enter to begin," blinked. Jaspin hesitated for a second. There was something unsettling about the simplicity of it. She pressed Enter. The screen flickered, then went completely black for a moment. And then it came back. The game opened to reveal a dimly lit room, dusty, abandoned, a feeling of decay hanging in the air. The only light came from a flickering bulb overhead, casting shadows that seemed to dance unnaturally across the room. The walls were barren. but she could almost hear someone whispering. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to steady. "All right," she said, trying to laugh it off. "Here we go." But when she spoke, the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder. "Jaspin!" Jaspin froze. The voice wasn't part of the game. The voice came from the room around her as if someone was in her room with her. Her heart raced in her chest. She turned around, glancing nervously behind her. There was no one. She was alone. It was just the game, she told herself. Just the game. The chat exploded with comments. "Did you hear that? Wait, it said your name. This game is freaky, Jaspin." She laughed nervously. "Guys, I'm sure it's just a sound design thing, nothing to worry about." But deep down, she felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. This wasn't just the game. Still, she pushed forward. Her character moved down a dark hallway. Every footstep echoed in the silence. The hallway stretched endlessly, with no end in sight. The bulb overhead flickered once, then twice. And the whispers? They grew louder. They became clearer. "Jaspin." She tried to steady her breath, speaking into the microphone, forcing out a chuckle. "Okay, I'm starting to get creeped out here. Am I hearing things? Is this game messing with me?" But there was no response from the chat, only a flood of concern. "Jaspin, please be careful. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Turn around, look behind you." Jaspin ignored the rising panic in her chest and moved her character forward. She had to keep playing. "It's just a game," she reminded herself. Just a game. Her character reached a door at the end of the hallway. It creaked open, slowly, as if inviting her inside. Inside, there was a desk with a single sheet of paper on it. The game zoomed in on the paper. Jaspin's hands clenched around the mouse, her fingers cold with sweat. She clicked to examine it, her breath hitching in her throat. The words on the paper were simple, but they made her blood run cold. "It's time to end the stream." Jaspin's heartbeat quickened. She blinked. Twice. That's not part of the game," she whispered to herself, voice barely audible. The chat was silent at first. Then it exploded. "That's not in the game, right? Jaspin, that's messed up. Did it really just say that?" She laughed nervously, trying to cover the fear creeping into her voice. Okay, guys. Let's just keep going. It's probably just some weird Easter egg or something. Nothing to worry about." But her words felt hollow. Something was wrong. So wrong. The air in her room felt thick, cold. The walls of the game felt like they were closing in around her. Her character continued, stepping into another dark room. She was starting to wish she hadn't gone this far. But it was too late. She couldn't stop now. The whispers grew louder again. "Jaspin." The voice. It was coming from the game, but it was also coming from behind her. She whipped her head around, her pulse racing. There was nothing there. Her eyes darted across the room, searching. But the space was empty. The door was locked. The window was shut. She was alone. But the voice was real. It was in her room. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to move the mouse. She clicked on the next door in the game. Her character slowly opened it. But before the door could fully open, the screen glitched for a split second. Jaspin froze. For just a moment, her face on the webcam didn't look like hers. The image of her face twisted, distorted, before snapping back to normal. She gasped. "What was that?" The chat went wild. "Did anyone see that? Jaspin, your face, it glitched! This is not okay anymore, girl!" Jaspin tried to laugh it off, but her heart wasn't in it. The atmosphere in her room was suffocating, oppressive. She could feel the shadows closing in. She reached for the mouse, clicked the window, closed the game, get out of there. But when she clicked to exit the game, nothing happened. The whispers didn't stop. They were louder now, clearer. And now they weren't just part of the game. They were in her room too. She could hear them whispering, breathing, moving behind her. She tried to shut the game down, but the screen wouldn't go away. Her hands trembled as she reached for the keyboard. "Jaspin!" She jumped, spinning around, but there was no one, except for the shadow in the corner of her room. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a flicker at the edge of her vision. But now it was moving closer. The chat was exploding. "Turn around! The shadow! It's moving! Get out of there, Jaspin!" "What is that?" Jaspin turned back to the game. Her eyes locked on the screen, but she couldn't focus anymore. She needed to end the stream. Now. But before she could click the End Stream button, the words appeared on the screen. "You shouldn't have left." The screen went black. The feed cut. Her webcam froze. The whispers didn't stop. The shadow didn't leave.